Season 9 of Night School is presented by the AQHA. Don't miss All-American Weekend at Riadoso Downs. Keeneland Select. New players can earn a $150 sign-up bonus. Woodbine. Thoroughbred and standardbred racing every weekend at Woodbine and Woodbine Mohawk Park. Remington Park. Thoroughbred action is back. Play the free Thorough Enduro competition at thoroughenduro.com. And ExpressBet. Refer your friends. Get $50 at expressbet.com.
Horses have off days, and by looking at them before they actually get on the racetrack, you get an initial impression of which way they're leaning.
This is going to sound crazy, but for me, it's intellectual stimulation.
Class is now in session. It's time for Night School. Here are your hosts.
Welcome back, everyone, to Night School, Season 9 of the Fan Education Program presented by Horseplayer Now. I'm Jeremy Plonk. We're not going to call it the fall semester just yet. It's the second semester as we're smack dab in the middle of the boutique meets. Joined, as always, in Night School by General Manager Brian W. Spencer of Horseplayer Now. Brian, this lesson we talk 2-year-olds.
Yeah, we're going to talk 2-year-olds here at a really good time of the year. You already mentioned those boutique meets, Saratoga, Del Mar. We get to see a lot of those 2-year-olds unleashed. So it's a good time of the year to start talking about that, especially as we'll see some more of those horses come throughout the fall. But a very tricky topic as we progress through into this second semester. We're going to get into some more advanced topics, and 2-year-olds, for me at least, one of the more interesting but also very difficult topics in all of racing.
Yeah, and it's a big time for 2-year-olds in the AQHA ranks as well. The short liners will have the All-American Futurity coming up on Labor Day. Big money races at Los Al the end of the year, at Sunland as well. So a lot going on nationally in the 2-year-old game, and we'll talk about it in this lesson, try to give you some handicapping approaches and things to look for in these 2-year-old races. Brian, for me, it really boils down to 3 things, and I don't think these are very unique, and I think that's why everybody handicaps 2-year-old races fairly similarly. I think the 3 main points are trainer intent and trainer stats, the pedigree of the horses, and the workouts, and which order you place the emphasis on those 3 elements maybe determines what kind of 2-year-old better you are. But to me, when horses don't show a lot in their past performances, and we're talking early 2-year-olds here, it really comes down to trainer intent, workouts, and pedigrees.
Yeah, and like you said, the order of those 3 is going to be different for everybody because especially, I mean, in all of handicapping, but I feel like especially in handicapping 2-year-olds, early career 2-year-olds, everyone's sort of got their own, special secret sauce, so to speak, of how they end up at, picking a top horse in a 2-year-old race. But I think that the workouts are the tricky point because looking at them on paper, you can only glean so much, and that's where you want to, some people turn to workout reports. Some people are at the track early in the morning and they can kind of get eyes on certain horses on their own. Other horses, maybe you'll get to see some interesting potential debuters on websites like xb.com. If you can get your eyes on a workout, that's obviously going to be far preferable than just looking on paper, but you're not hopeless just looking at workouts on paper either, Jeremy.
Yeah, trainer stats are the key, I think, that everybody has right in front of them. Most of those published in any past performance product that you use, the tote board tends to go to them. Your favorites are going to be, the top trainers, the trainers who really push with their 2-year-olds. Depending on the circuit you're at, the names, but nationally, Brian, throw out a couple names there that people obviously, glean towards when it comes to the 2-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at, and we could look at Saratoga with a 2-year-old anywhere, especially in Kentucky. You're looking at Wesley Ward's. You're looking at Todd Pletcher's, Steve Asmussen type runners, Bob Baffert, kind of those big national names. They can, they win in every category, really. But I think, thinking about connections and workouts, you can also kind of gel those 2 topics together. Once you know your connections, a guy like Steve Asmussen, and what his horse's workout pages tend to look like, sort of, moderate workouts, not a whole lot of super flashy ones. So when you see some of these horses come along for a barn like that who are firing, bullet best of 71, bullet best of 59 for trainer Steve Asmussen, you got to start to think, hey, Steve doesn't work his horses like this. There's probably a little bit more going on here than just the raw numbers on the page and what I know about Steve as far as his percentages go.
And with workouts, if all you see are the times and you don't get a chance to look at videos with XBTV, or you don't purchase a workout report from a reputable source, look at that ranking as much as the time. Third fastest of 42. That's as important as the final time, because remember, these are 2-year-olds working against the entire colony of horses. 42 horses may have worked a half mile this morning at Del Mar, and out of those half-mile workers, 3/4 of them were probably older horses. So is a 2-year-old working faster than older horses at this point in their career? That's a good sign. So I think that ranking when it comes to the workout times can be as important as the raw time itself. Pedigree is probably the hidden frontier. It takes work to do pedigree stats, and some of the pedigree stats that are like really obvious don't have big sample sizes. You might have a sire who's in their first, second, third crop. Until they get really established as a well-known 2-year-old sire, you can get some pedigree plays, but it takes work. You got to dive into it a little bit, either through a purchased product or a lot of Googling. You can go back and look at pages. You can go to equibase.com and do a dam search, which is good. It'll give you all the offspring of a particular dam, and you can go in individually, click on each one, and try to figure out what they did. Were they win early types? Were they good as 2-year-olds right out of the box? Those are the kind of tools I think sales pages from the catalog pages from like the Keeneland sales or Physic Tipton sales that you find through a Google. Go back and look at sires and dams on those catalog pages. See what they've produced. What kind of horses did they produce? Were they turf horses that went long? Now you've got a dirt sprinter. Maybe that's a 2-year-old you don't want to play. Those are a couple tricks of getting around some of the free services. One of the tips I like to tell people is go to Google and type in the word sire dam and then the name of the dam in parentheses and are in quote marks, and that will take you really to a lot of the catalog pages that you're looking for a specific dam, and then that can give you some pedigree hints there without spending the money of going in for a pedigree source. But if you want to spend the money and go the extra step, there's definitely good products out there. Check those out. Brian, we talk a lot about the first-time starters with 2-year-olds, but that's early in the year. As we get later in the year, these 2-year-olds start to develop a little bit of form. I like to look at it as when did the horse sell? Was this a yearling purchase? A yearling purchase and a horse who has been developed by an owner and a trainer might get better as the year gets going. A 2-year-old in training purchase in March or April may be more intent and ready to go right out of the box. So your early season 2-year-olds, look when they were sold. Were they sold as 2-year-olds in March or April? And those horses are the ones you want to look at in like May, June, maybe even into July. But once it starts to get to the end of July, into August and September and October, these good yearlings start to really come out. That's when the high dollar yearlings are starting to make their presence known as 2-year-olds. So the time of the year can be important as well.
Yeah, and I think, sort of dovetailing with the idea of looking back at when and how a horse sold, one of the angles I do feel fairly good about in these 2-year-old races, and I think it probably hits a little bit harder early in the year, as you alluded to in those, May, June races, is when you get horses who have really kind of cheap, really blue-collar looking pedigrees, but somebody prominent paid a decent dollar for them, and then they come out running for a high-name barn. You get a very sort of, or more obscure type pedigree. You're not running an American Pharaoh baby, but Wesley Ward shows up with it at Keeneland, second weekend of the spring meet. That's interesting to me, is when you get, we talk about that with jockeys and trainers too. A low percentage jockey for a high percentage trainer. That's a good angle. A horse that doesn't look like they should be special, that somebody paid money for, who's got a name in the racing industry. That's important to me, because that means that the horse probably has really great conformation, is probably put together really well, and can probably run.
And with 2-year-olds, you're looking for horses that start to progress, right? I mean, it's not all about the first-time starters. That first start can be a throwaway for a lot of them who simply the trainer intent wasn't there to go hard. Maybe the inexperience factor got them. 2-year-olds can improve rapidly, more than what we see with older horses. So don't look at the ceiling of a 2-year-old based on that first start or even the second start. They can really start to make some improvement. as they get more distance added to their game, maybe a change of surface, a change of venue. Remember, a 2-year-old who didn't like Saratoga may love Belmont. It might turn out to be a Belmont horse for course. You can see major wake-ups with these 2-year-olds as they make maybe that second, third start that you don't see with the older horses. One tip towards that is look at the workout pattern after the debut. The horse makes their debut, say, on the first of the month, 15 days later is back on the work tab, and that first work back is much better than the horse was working going into that debut. You can start to see a horse who's maybe the light bulb coming on and turning the corner. Those are the kind of horses you might be able to pop at with a nice price the next time. I think one thing when we talk about prices in 2-year-old races, Brian, people think that the 2-year-old races are all about he knew, they knew. That the live money is so smart in 2-year-old races. The facts are this: over the last 5 years, favorites win 37% of 2-year-old races across America. They win 37% of all races across America during that same time. It's the exact same percentage. And first-time starting 2-year-olds, right? That's where all the hot money is. First-time starting 2-year-old who's bet the favorite, 35% win. It's actually a little bit less than the national average of favorites in all races. So I know we all remember that horse who was bet down to 4-5 and everybody knew, but the facts are they don't win any more than any other division. So if you are looking for a price in the 2-year-old races, Brian, where do you go?
Well, I looked at some numbers as well, not outside of percentages, but actual average winning odds, and it is true that 2-year-old maiden races pay almost a full point better than older horse maiden races, but really where the money is at, and I think this was a little bit interesting to me, is 2-year-old maiden special weight races pay more. They pay almost 6-1 on your average winner over the last 3 years. So you get favorites who are a little bit longer priced sometimes, but I think you kind of get that sort of short priced Wesley Ward winner, or you get some potential for chaos. And I think that is part of what influences the fact that you can get prices in 2-year-old maiden special races, is a lot of people just gravitate towards the easy, obvious answer on paper.
And as we get into the fall of the 2-year-old races, you start to see more form. Churchill in the fall, Aqueduct in the fall, Gulfstream as they ramp up towards their championship meet in December. These 2-year-olds start to get more form, and we start to go longer with the 2-year-olds. When you're stretching a 2-year-old out, pedigree is huge here. I mean, there are so many brilliant, young, fast 2-year-olds who win at 5, 6, maybe 7 furlongs in the summer who are not two-turn types, but the money is with two-turn races towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So you're going to see horses stretch out, and they're going to get that test whether they can go a distance or not. Pedigree is so important here. The Briss average winning distance on the dam side, I think, is something you want to look at, and also look at the sires, the kind of horses they've produced. And the dams, stamina tends to come from the dam side. So again, that's the running lines and the pedigree lines that you want to look at on the dam side as much as anything, as these horses stretch out. And again, here's where your trainer stats can come in. Kenny McPeek's 2-year-olds, for instance, kind of get better as they go longer at Keeneland in the fall, where Wesley Ward is more, sprint laden with his 2-year-olds. So get to know the trainers and what they do going short and long. Dale Roman's 2-year-olds going long later in the year tend to do a little bit better. Get to know your trainers in that respect. And another thing from a running line, I love even running sprinters stretching out in distance. Find me a horse who ran like 4th or 5th all the way around the track in a sprint race who has a little bit of pedigree to route, and now they go 2 turns, because that one-geared style is going to play very well in a 2-year-old race. Most 2-year-olds do not want to go around 2 turns, so it's kind of like that steady comer wins the race. If you can run 25s all the way around the track for each split, that can win 2-year-old route races. So even running sprinters, stretching out in distance in the 2-year-old ranks, and of course pedigree and trainer stats there are always important.
Yeah, agreed. That is one of the angles that's a perfect way to kind of put a bow on this 2-year-old discussion, that you brought up that even running sprinter stretching out. That is a wonderful angle, especially in these 2-year-old races, and something that I love to look for is a decent late pace number on an even running horse like that. That at least tells me they're finishing with a little bit of energy and might be able to sustain that around 2 turns.
And a quick note for our AQHA friends. Remember, the money in the quarter horse game is with the 2-year-olds. So the futurities that are out there, this is where these horses are bred and really aimed at during their racing careers. Look for horses coming out of the futurity trials and dropping back into maiden races. It's a huge drop in class for the 2-year-olds. If somebody thought enough to nominate and pay a horse up to a major futurity and took a shot in the trials, even if it didn't go well and they didn't become a stakes horse, those 2-year-old quarter horses dropping out of the trials back into maiden specials, maiden claim claimers really have a major class advantage. That's a good handicapping tip for the 2-year-olds in the AQHA ranks, which again is so prevalent for those short liners. We're going to take a break on this edition of Night School. When we come back, we'll have Caton Bredar joining Brian to talk about it. But before Caton joins us, Marcus Hirsch visits Night School from the vault as we go back and look at classic Night School clips from past guests talking about these topics. Marcus, then Caton coming up.
Cheer on live racing from Woodbine and Mohawk Park. Thoroughbred and harness action. The wagers are just the beginning. Watch award-winning broadcasts covering both breeds, incredible battles contested over the most unique grass course in North America. Experience the full fields with over 130 thoroughbred and 160 live harness days. Get access to free handicapping material and join the ranks of Woodbine and Mohawk Park players from all over the globe. For more information, visit woodbine.com.
Strategize, analyze, select. Join Keeneland Select to bet on racing from around the world on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, anytime, anywhere. Featuring the best rewards in racing, free pass performances, live video, race replays, and more. Plus, Keeneland Select invests a portion of its profits back into the sport. Join Keeneland Select today and earn a $150 sign-up bonus at KeenelandSelect.com. Dedicated to the sport and dedicated to the players.
Some folks like to bet on the horses. Some like to bet on the games. Some folks like to bet on their phone. And some like to bet from their suite. So what's your best bet? All of the above. No matter how you like to bet, Remington Park is your best bet yet. With world-class horse racing, OKC's newest casino, and online suite booking now available. Remington Park, it's your best bet yet.
Hey, what's going on? Mikey here, and I'm going to tell you about an offer from my good friends at ExpressBet. Let's be honest, we know you love playing the races, but you can't always make it to the track. Sometimes life just gets in the way of a good bet. Well, what if I told you about a place where you never miss a bet and you start with house money? You'd say I'm crazy, right? Well, not at ExpressBet. Your first $100 are on them. That's right. Sign up with expressbet.com using promo code XBRadio, bet $100, and they'll deposit $100 back into your account the very next day. Hey, plus you could get an extra $25 if you use Express Fund Direct Deposit. You see what I mean? House money for betting the races. It's that easy. Check it out at expressbet.com to learn more. And don't forget to sign up with promo code XBRadio. You're gonna love it. And that's a Mikey guarantee. Must be 18 years or older and 21 years old in certain states to open an account with ExpressBet and reside in a state where such activity is legal. Void where prohibited. National Gambling Support Line 800-522-4700.
Welcome back to the show. Enjoy this classic Night School clip from the vault.
Even if you don't get to watch workouts, you can learn a lot from looking at a maiden's work pattern. I'm talking about unraised horses in particular. You want to see a horse that is on a regular work pattern. They're working every 7 days, every 10 days, every whatever. I want to see a kind of a decent variety of works. I don't want to see just one fast 3/8 or one fast 5/8. I want to see a solid 5/8, a solid half mile, a little bit of quickness in one of the 3 furlong drills to suggest the horse has enough speed to keep up. Just all kinds of stuff that you can find out just by looking at the work patterns. Probably my favorite kind of maiden races are maiden claimers. I especially look for horses that show a low purchase price, say $5,000, $7,000. They might debut for $35,000. That's 7 times more than the owner paid. To me, that's a really positive sign when they're stepping them up way above the price that they paid. These are horses that they don't have a lot of pedigree, but they can just run, and they're usually well meant in situations like that.
Welcome back to Night School. Very happy to be joined to close out the show by Caton Bredar. And Caton, we've talked 2-year-olds here. Big storyline as we're in the middle of the summer with those big boutique meets. And everybody's kind of got their secret sauce, so to speak, of what they're looking at and in what order they prioritize those things when they're trying to find a winner in 2-year-old races. Caton, how do you walk us through that, especially in the on paper, before you get that chance to see those horses in the paddock?
Well, I first of all think that this is one of the more fun categories of races that you can handicap. And because I think it's one of the few opportunities where you might be able to put variables together and come up with something that others don't see. So you might actually get a good price. It's also, I think, where more people tend to look for patterns and assume that these are going to hold true. And again, that's why you get good prices. For example, people fall in love with theories like Bill Mott doesn't win with first-time starters or with 2-year-olds, which, at one point statistically was certainly true, although he occasionally would come up with one that would win, and it would pay huge. And the idea that a Hall of Fame trainer can't train a 2-year-old to win first out is just sort of absurd. Yes, different trainers have different patterns, but and ways of doing things. But that doesn't mean that if the right horse comes along, the trainer isn't going to be able to get that out of them. So I would say I tend to ignore trainer angles a little bit more with 2-year-olds than I do other categories of horses. So it's maybe one of the lesser points for me. And I also think that constantly certain trainers get way overbet with 2-year-olds. Just because it's a Wesley Ward 2-year-old doesn't mean it's going to win. I mean, it might, and a high percentage have, but they are all bet heavily. And as a result, many times they're way over bet and still more lose than they win. So I think the trainer angles are going against the tide. That's in some respects, maybe the last thing that I'm considering. I definitely look at pedigree. I think that certain sire lines and certainly certain mares were able to win or throw offspring that are early developers. So that pedigree to me is really important. Workout patterns are important. Being able to see that a horse has a foundation versus just a couple of workouts at some place I've never heard of. So I put a lot of emphasis on workouts, but not necessarily that they have to be fast. Just what have they been doing? But I will go to Clocker's reports too. I think that that's where Daily Racing Form especially is my Clocker report of choice at some of the boutique meets. At Gulfstream, I'm able to rely on those observations from the DRF Clocker reports to kind of tell you readiness of a horse, where they're at. And that to me those are the most important things in deciding whether you consider them or throw them out. And then if they've run previously, that is always helpful. I do think that most of the time, if a horse has started previously and showed a little bit of run, those horses have at least a slight advantage over the horses that have never run before. It just makes sense. They've been through it. They've seen it. And if there was something that didn't go right, the trainers hopefully were able to work on it or fine tune it, maybe take them back in school in the paddock if they got a little worked up, take them back to the gate if they didn't break well, and so on. So I do favor horses that have a little experience. But, and then I guess you could say it's a reverse angle, but I consider trainers, but not the way I traditionally do. I basically look for opportunities and look for those trainers that maybe haven't shown that they win with or have a high percentage of strike rate with first-time starters, but that particular individual has the right ingredients otherwise. Those are the types of horses I love to bet. I conversely like to bet against a Todd Pletcher first-time starter. That comes back to haunt you a lot, but again, it's probably one of the most overbet categories, and it's probably the category he loses the most in. Not that he loses that much in any category, but it's probably one of his lower percentage categories. So I look for others there rather than the big names.
And we've seen throughout tonight's episode a lot of emphasis put on trainers and put on connections. And Caton reminds us to take a step back and remember that each of these horses are individuals and stats are just that. And a solid trainer with the right horse can win in just about any situation. So this is going to do it for our first episode of the second semester covering those 2-year-olds. We'll be back next week to talk daily doubles.
Next on FAQ 60, problem horses. Sometimes a horse can be his own worst enemy. Other times, he's a victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Determining which horses simply have bad luck and which ones are bad actors is the key to identifying problem horses. A horse who has trouble comments in more than half of his races is a red flag. Look for a common thread in the comments. Repeat comments can be a sign that the horse is a bad actor. Comments that mix offenses, bumped both sides start, or shied from rival can indicate simply bad racing luck. Also, notice if similar trouble comments appear when breaking from certain post positions, which can be a sign of a horse who has some self-made issues. This FAQ 60 is brought to you by AQHA Racing and Horse Player Now.
Enjoy tonight's episode? Check out hundreds of past archives at horseplayernow.com.